Hi everyone, welcome to the very first segment of the series. Okay, I did say I think about I guess more than a week now that I would run a series of lessons on about the first language English IGCSE. I said that the focus would be on the 0500 and the 0990 um, first language IGCSE. Okay, so today is the very first session, and I hope to do a session weekly. I'm also guessing that this would run for about 8 weeks. Okay, and I intend to sustain the tempo. And I think the most important thing is you going over the videos, checking the materials. I would also recommend some Cambridge textbooks. Many of these textbooks are, when I say textbooks, I mean course books as well. Okay, course books, workbooks, um, um, teacher guides, and all of that. Exam preparation guides and all that. Now, most of these books um, are important, not just to existing teachers. I mean those that are familiar with the syllabi. I mean the 0500 and the 0990 syllabi. Not just to teachers familiar with those two syllabi, but also for teachers who intend to, get themselves familiar with the first language English syllabi. Okay. Okay, so this is the first session, and this session basically would just discuss, or let me say, this would be more of an overview. Okay, I'll be talking briefly, I guess, about what the 0500 as well as the 0990 syllabi are. I would also focus on the skills they assess. I would also say a few things about the varieties of the IGCSE English exams, okay, as well as the variants, okay, so you could understand a few of the things. I would also, go into talking about the papers that are written, but I'll pay more attention to um, relevant papers, and by that I mean papers that are, written more, especially within the African continent. Okay, I hope this would be of great benefit to you. If you have questions, please, after the video, please, you do well to type your questions. I'll respond to them as soon as I can. I'm also open to very constructive criticism, also open to recommendations, and, just anything you deem healthy and fit. Okay. So thank you so much. So let's just delve into this. I have a PowerPoint. Okay, I developed the PowerPoint and I'll keep doing that. At moments when I need to share worksheets with us, I'll do that. At other times when I need to just take a snapshot of some pages of some course books I have and all of that, I'll do that. I'd also, definitely indicate indicate the titles of these books, okay, in case someone really would like to get them. All right, so let's just delve into it. So, like I did say, I'm about sharing my screen with you. Okay, so um, like I did say, the focus, of the this week's series would basically be on an overview. Um, I'm not I'm not assuming that everybody watching this understands what the syllabi is about. And one of the reasons why I seem to be um, combining, two syllabi, which is the 0500 and the 0990, is because they have the same content. Okay, they test the same skills, all right? Um, you know, and then they also develop in students, okay, ex like the same skills. Okay, so that's why I'm doing so. The moment you get a hang of the 0500 syllabus, you definitely okay can teach the 0990. And these two syllabi, okay, are taught you know, and assessed in Nigeria. Okay. I know schools that offer the 0500 rather than the 0990. And I also equally know schools, that offer the 0990. Okay. So it depends. It depends on your choice. Okay. But if you can teach the 0500, then you can definitely teach the 0990 and, vice versa. The difference is just, the difference is not in content. Okay. The difference is rather in the grading system. The 0500 uses the A star, to Q or whatever grading system, while the 0990 uses the 9 to 1. Okay, same thing, but the grades are different. Okay, so in 0500, you talk about A star, A, B, C, D, E, and all that. But in 0990, you don't talk about A star, A, and all that. You simply talk about grade 9, you know, grades 8, grade 7, 6, 5, and all that, up until 1. Okay, but, once a student is able to have 4, then, based on going by Cambridge recommendation, then the student can take other exams. Okay, so it's the same content, the same focus, the same objectives and all. The difference is just in the grading system. Okay. Okay, so or should I say the grading system? The difference is just in the grading nomenclature. Okay, basically. So not in the grading system. They are graded the same way. Okay, but the labeling is different. So in the 0500, the labeling is A star A and all that. But in 0990, the labeling is 9, to 1. Okay, you either have a 9 or an 8 or a 7 or a 6 and all that, but all the same, and they're all equivalent, okay, of each other. All right, so let's just delve into this. Okay, so you know, what are the objectives of this series, and especially this very first session in the series? Okay, I'm hoping that by the end of the session, every participant, I mean, every person who would see this video, okay, I'm hoping that you'll be able to identify the objectives of the syllabi. You would be able to, and the objectives, I mean, you'll be able to identify the aims, the goals of the syllabi. Most of the time, the focus of the teacher is on examination, passing, succeeding, success, and all of that. Okay, but beyond success, okay, each syllabus has an objective, and it's important for English language teachers, to teach with an eye on the objectives, okay? Because I strongly believe that beyond your student having an A star or a 9, okay, um, it's the objectives that you're able um to to achieve, okay, that would actually sustain your students much later in the future. Okay, so as much as we emphasize success, as much as we emphasize our students, coming out in flying colors, let's not jeopardize the primary objectives of the syllabi. It's very important. And then we would also, and I'm also hoping that by the end of the session, every single attendee would know the skills, okay? What are the skills that this syllabi evaluates? What are the skills, okay? What skills must my students acquire? How can I, what skills must they develop? Okay, because basically this examination, I mean, these papers assess skills. Okay, they evaluate skills, and it's to what extent, okay, the examiner is convinced, okay, that determines the grades. But beyond that, okay, if the skills are developed in them, okay, they will find them handy, okay, in the nearest future. Okay, so I'm hoping that by the end of the session, this would have been achieved. I mean, you would understand, you'll be able to identify the aims and all of that. Then secondly, I'm also hoping that by the end of the session, each attendee, okay, would be able to know the difference between the variants and the varieties. Okay. Now, in Cambridge, there's a difference between variety and variant. Okay, and I'm going to talk about that. Okay, so I'm hoping that by the end of this video, okay, by the time you see the video and all that, you would understand. If you don't know, prior to this, you would have understood the difference between variety, I mean the different varieties of the IGCSE English language, and the variant. Okay, and you know how they differ. You know how the varieties differ from one another. You know how the variants differ from one another. And then as a tutor, you also be able to identify the variant, the variety that is taught at your school, and the variant also that is administered at your school. And lastly, I'm also hoping that by the end of the session, every attendee, okay, would be able to recognize how the skills, okay, your students are meant to acquire in the subject, how the skills apply, to each of the IGCSE papers. Now, very important. If your students acquire, skills, okay, linguistics skills, and they don't know how to apply them, okay, it's a dangerous thing. Okay, so it's important for a language teacher, okay, to know relevant skills, okay, and then to know the application of those skills, okay, to the subject. All right, so let's move on. Now, I think it's safe. It's safe to begin here. Okay. Now, what are the objectives? What are the aims? Okay. Why do my students, okay, why does my school, okay, um, take the first language English IGCSE, be it the 0500 or the 0990. Remember, I did say that they are the same. Okay. The difference is just in the grades. Okay. Basically in the labels. One is A star, A, B, blah. The other is grade 9, grade 8, and all of that. Okay. So that's just the difference. But same content, objective, everything the same. Now, what are the objectives? Okay. Now, because we all would agree that if you don't know the purpose of a thing, okay, abuse is inevitable. So why is the first language English IGCSE, why is it recommended? Okay, what are the objectives? Now, first of all, you see the PowerPoint. I might not have to read this to you. I'll just explain. Now, first of all, it one of the reasons why we educators have to take this syllabi, you know, um, extremely serious. Okay, and then we have to take them seriously because beyond the examination, they build in our students some practical skills. Okay, and the very first one that, by experience have seen is the exposure. Okay, how would you teach first language English IGCSE? And by at least the end of the session, your students are not exposed to a variety of both fiction and non-fictional text. Okay, because the essence, beyond the examination, the essence is to expose learners, okay, to reading. Okay, and one of the ways to achieve that is by exposing them to a variety of text. Okay, exposing them to fictional text, creative writing, helping them encouraging them to read, you know, the varieties of fiction, encouraging them to read mystery, encouraging them to read sci-fi, encouraging them sometimes, okay, they might be, we might have to guide them, but also encouraging them to read romance. Okay, that's, you know, encouraging them, okay, also to read horror, okay, because there are few of them, okay, that love horror. Okay, so so now, and these are sub varieties of prose. Okay, so exposing them to read a variety of these things. Okay, exposing them to read fantastic stories, magic, stories about magic, fairies, and all of that. Okay, so basically, the the first language English IGCSE, you know, is geared towards helping students develop, whetting their appetite for reading. And one of the most effective ways, okay, is to expose them to a variety of text, fictional text and non-fiction. Now, what are non-fiction? Articles, okay, be they blog, I mean, internet articles or magazine articles, okay, exposing them to a variety of articles. Um, it's interesting that we adults read. Okay, fine. Maybe we don't buy papers anymore. We probably do that online. Okay. But some of the news articles you read online, what stops you, okay, from printing out a few and sharing them with your students, making them read, especially such news articles that have interesting themes, okay, that the students can relate, you know, um, to. Okay. So basically, the focus is to, as much as we prepare for exams, okay, the focus also is to encourage them to read, okay, and to, stimulate them, to nudge them towards reading. And you cannot do that if you don't expose them to a variety of fictional and non-fictional text. And one of the things that does, okay, is that it eventually, makes them learn how language works, okay, and in the process, they enjoy it. Okay, when they begin to get exposed to books and all that, fiction, non-fiction, get exposed to non-fiction speeches, classics and all that. One of the things that does is they then begin to understand how language works, and they begin to enjoy it. Beyond that, they also move from understanding, enjoying to analyzing language. Okay, and if you've been teaching the IGCSE first language English, you know that it is, as much as it's a reading examination, it's also steeply an analytical one, like a writing one. Okay, so basically exposes them to reading, okay, just to stimulate the interest in reading. And also, one of the objectives is it also makes them critical. So beyond reading, their minds are involved and then they can begin to ask questions. So in the process, they become active readers because as you encourage them to read, as you put before them text, short or long text, as ask questions and all that, one of the things you begin to help them with is they move from being passive readers to being active readers. And an active reader is a reader who reads, okay, and then thinks about what they read, okay, and asks questions. Okay, so I tell my students, okay, that if you read without thinking about what you read and without asking questions, okay, you're just like a pet. Okay, so do you put a book before your pet, before your dog, before your cat, okay, before your horse to read? You don't do that. Okay, fine, I understand there are a few exceptions, okay, but that also takes, some level of innovation, okay, for you to get your dog to read. I really don't know, how possible that is. Don't, and I really do not want us to discuss that here. Okay, so basically, okay, so we really have to. So one of the things that, the IGCSE, I mean, they're taking this, the objective, or one of the objectives is that it also develops critical thinking in them. They begin to ask questions, they begin to query, they begin to examine, okay, and that develops their thought, quality of thought, that also develop their critical thinking. Okay, now, another objective of this syllabi is that it also inculcates in your student the appropriate use of English. And then we know, okay, for teachers of English, we know that we have varieties of English, okay, but we know that regardless of the varieties, we know we have standard and non-standard. And then we know what's standard. Standard English simply manifests in two forms, formal and informal. Okay. And English could be, an expression could be informal, but it is standard, meaning it is appropriate. However, it's simply appropriate within the everyday conversation context. Okay. It's not appropriate within the business, okay, official context. Okay. But it's still standard. And then we know non-standard, curse, okay, slang and all that, non-standard. Okay. Because sometimes they might be derogatory. Okay, so basically, this also exposes our students to appropriateness of English and to the necessity of using standard English. Okay. The practical aspect also is that you can expose them to this in a session, and by the end of the session or two, your students wouldn't have learned application, information application, how to apply the pieces of information and ideas they come across in the text they read, in the articles, whether be them faction, fiction, non-fiction, and all that. You can't teach them any of the syllabus, okay, and your student wouldn't learn application alongside. Okay, so very, very important. So these are the objectives. And then the last of all, which is as important as others, is that in the process, if you're exposing your students to a variety of text, one of the things that your students would easily learn is vocabulary, new words, okay? Um, you will be broadening the vocabulary of your students by exposing them to a variety of text. So now that's one of the reasons I appreciate the two syllabi. Okay, I think that they are as practical as they are theoretical. Okay, so let's move on. Let's just move on. All right, so what are the basic skills, okay, that are required for either of this, you know, any of this um, syllabi. Okay, so receptive skills and production skills. Okay, so productive skills, receptive and productive skills. Now, receptive skills. Now, what are the receptive skills? They are basically skills with which we receive information. And how do we receive information? We receive information by either listening or by reading. And you must ensure that you train your student, in listening and reading. Okay, because if you don't allow them practice listening, they might be deficient, okay, in getting pieces of information through listening. And if you don't practice reading, they might be seriously deficient. Okay, so receptive skills are tested in this syllabi, reading and listening. And when I say listening, okay, pronunciation, intonation, and accent. Okay, accent might not be important, um, because the examiner understands that accent is not necessarily standard English. The accent is simply a hint of the region a speaker comes from. Okay, but we understand that intonation and pronunciation are part of standard English. Okay, so listening is very important. You need to help your students understand this rising intonation, falling intonation, how they apply to speaking, how, by paying attention to the intonation, how your students can understand, sometimes stress, okay, at other times, how your student can understand, you know, information being um, assessed, okay, and also information being accessed, okay, and then reading. Now, reading is quite important. Your students can't be successful in paper one if they have not practiced reading. And what are the skills? Okay, skimming. Skimming. We all know what skimming is. Okay, reading quickly. Okay, when you train your student to you train them to rifle through a text. Okay, so they read through it. They read quickly. not for details, okay, but they read to just get the gist of the text. Or what's this text about? You're not asking for names, you're not asking for location, you're not asking for reasons and all that. You simply want them to give you the main idea. What is a text about? So that's skimming. They read quickly, okay, not paying attention to details, just to tell you what the text is about. Okay, so it's very important. It's a skill your students must develop because they would require that in the IGCSE. Okay, and then scanning. Scanning now is reading slowly. Okay, not because you want to slow yourself down, but because you want to identify specific relevant pieces of information. Okay, so this time you're not reading quickly, rather you're doing it slowly just to pick specific pieces of information. And the last one is selecting. It's one thing to identify relevant pieces of information. It's another thing to be able to select the most appropriate. Okay, there could be two, three pieces of information that seem alike. Okay, but it could be the presence of a word or just some sort of nuance, okay, that distinguishes one from the other. Okay, so basically, your students must acquire the skills and you must help develop them. Okay, and then productive skills, we know what they are. How do we produce information? If we receive information through listening and reading, how do we then produce information? We produce information primarily through speaking and writing. Now, I'm speaking to you. Okay, so I'm producing pieces of information. Okay, I had to develop this PowerPoint, which is a sort of writing. It's also part of production. Okay, so you must develop these skills in your students. They must be able to speak, especially for those that will be taking the speaking part of this because they're speaking. That's paper 4. They're speaking. Okay, for those who take it, most schools within the country do not take speaking for first language English, but there are times that some candidates require that, and depending on the application and ability, and speaking is not necessarily added up to the overall score. It's just an independent score, okay, just to prove proficiency, oral proficiency and all that. Okay, so um, we still need to develop speaking, help our students develop this productive skill, and they must be fluent. They must also be accurate, and coherence is very important. Now, writing is a steep. It's required. Okay, I can't imagine any of the English IGCSE exams without writing. Okay, so you must understand that it's your responsibility as a teacher to develop the writing skills of your student. Analysis, they must be analytical, they must think critically, and then express that, the critical thought process in writing. They must also be persuasive, okay, and then they must understand register, using the right word in the right context, using you know, the most accurate set of words, okay, to communicate meaning. All right, so very important. Okay, let's move on. So let's just delve into. So I would take each of these exams um, variety one after the other, and I'm not talking about the papers 3 and 4 of the 0500 first language English, because most schools don't do that. If you do, but most don't, and we will probably talk about that maybe towards the end. I mean, of the entire series. Okay, but I would like to focus more on the academic aspect of the examination. Okay, so if you're teaching or if your school opted for the 0500, you're likely to write papers 1 and 2. Okay, now paper 1 is reading, paper 2 is directed writing and composition, and each paper is worth 80 marks. Now, this is how the different sections, okay, this is how the 80 marks, okay, the marks are broken down in each paper. So in paper 1, you do comprehension, written summary, you do short answer, language response, writer's effect, and then extended response. Extended responses would be one of seven writing genres. Okay, so you might see letter or journal entry, but you have to have mastered all of this because your students have to learn how to respond in all of this. However, they would only be instructed to respond in one form, and who knows what that would be. So you have to ensure that your students are familiar with all seven. Okay, and each paper is for 2 hours. Okay, so each paper is worth 80 marks and each paper runs for 2 hours. You must help your students understand that speed is important, okay, but planning is equally important. So they must strike a balance between time management and painstakingness. Okay, they must learn to manage their time, okay, properly. Okay, but they must also learn to be thorough. Okay, because by experience, I've seen that what makes a student stand out isn't just the ability of the student to manage their time properly, but also that ability, the capacity to be thorough, ensuring that they leave no stone unturned, still within the designated time. Okay, so if your schools definitely would be taking the papers one and two, and this is the breakdown. Now in paper one, you have to get your student familiar with seven writing genres, all seven, and then Cambridge decides which one the students are asked to write an extended response in. Okay, however, in paper two, the focus is only on three. Okay, so your students would either write an article or a speech or a letter. So you have a responsibility to ensure that they master all three. Okay, so that whichever is published in the booklet, they can, attempt it. And then you have composition, which is two narrative task and then two descriptive tasks. Okay, but the interesting thing, okay, and which is great for students is that they would only answer on one. Okay, so basically, as a teacher, I have a responsibility to get my students familiar with all of these forms. Okay, so that my students can attempt any of the questions, and even when there are stipulated questions, my student, can as well attempt such questions. Okay, so now this is what I would follow. Okay, when we begin to delve into each concept. Okay, but I hope this has been helpful. Okay, so now, like I did say, okay, that okay, good. So I know I did say a few minutes back that the moment you master one, you have mastered the other. Okay, so if you know the 0500 first language English IGCSE, you equally, are familiar with the 0990. Same thing, same content, same focus, same objectives. The difference is just in the grades, okay? In that in 0500, you have A star, A, B, C, D, and so on. However, in 0990, okay, we aren't talking about A star. Rather, it's you either have a 9 or an 8 or a 7, which are all the same and globally accepted. Okay, so it depends. I know schools in Lagos, okay, that prefer the 0990. Okay. And I also equally know schools, in different parts that prefer the 0550. So it depends, but it's the same content, the same uh, examination pattern. Everything is the same. The difference is just in the nomenclature. Okay. The difference is in, the grade labeling. Okay. All right. So now let's move on. Now this is more or less like the last part of this session. And I did say that I would also talk about the difference between varieties of the IGCSE English and variant. Now, varieties of IGCSE English, it's just also like, okay, we're saying varieties of English. We have Chinglish, which is Chinese English. We equally have Korean English. We also have Singlish, Singaporean English, and all of that. And then we have our own Nigerian English and all that. Okay, so Cambridge has also developed varieties of the IGCSE English examination. Okay, so we have first language English. Now, first language English is always of two types, which I did mention. You either opt for the 055 0500, or you go for the 0990. Same content, syllables the same, everything the same. The difference is in, okay, the grade identity. Okay, so 0500, we're talking A star, A, B, blah, blah, blah. And then 0990, it's either a 9 or an 8 or a 7. No, okay, which are equally equivalent to 0500. Okay, now we equally have English as a second language. Now, I will tell you the difference. For English teachers, we know the difference, okay, but let me just emphasize the difference. If your school takes first language English, okay, be it the 0500 or the 0990, okay, then the impression you make is that the students in your school, okay, are first language users, meaning English is their first language. So you are saying that English is their mother tongue, okay? And I know a few schools in Nigeria that take, this variety, okay? So Um, I've worked in some of the places and all that, so I know the states. Okay, so English, if you take English, if the student, the learners in your school, if English is their first language, meaning if English is their mother tongue, then you should take English as a first language. So it means your students can relate. Your students can can withstand the difficulty. Well, I do not believe that any of those varieties are difficult. Is any is difficult? I really don't. Okay, but we believe different things, so I wouldn't want to go into that. Okay, so basically, if the learners within your school are, are first language users, then your school should take this. Although we have schools that take English as a first language, and there are students within the school that don't speak English as their mother tongue. Okay, well, for some of them, the school probably could opt for English as a second language. Okay, but I think all of those are just the same. They just vary in difficulty and all that. Okay, now we also have English. Okay, Cambridge IGCSE also administers another variety, which is English as a second language. So basically, it's like English is your lingua franca. Okay, English is not your mother tongue, okay, but it's the language of colonization. Okay, so for Nigeria, English is not the first language in Nigeria because it's not our mother tongue. English is the language of the empire that colonized us. Okay, so basically, English is a second language to us. Now, it's not a foreign language. Okay, rather, it's a second language to us. And quite a number of schools within the country actually take the IGCSE English as a second language. Same thing, no difference okay, between the 0510 or the 0993. No difference. Same content, syllables, everything the same. The difference is just in the grades, just in the grades. Okay. And then we then have English as an additional language. Now, this is like saying English is neither your mother tongue or an acquired language as in a second language to you. English is rather a foreign language. So when you hear English as an additional language, it's basically saying this is an exam variety. Okay, so for people who speak English as a foreign language. So let me give an example. My mother tongue is Yoruba. Okay, English is a second language to me. English is my lingua franca. Okay, so I acquired it because as a Nigerian, my country was colonized by the British Empire. Okay, so English is a second language to me. It's not my mother tongue, you know. However, French is a foreign language to me, okay, because my country wasn't colonized by France. Okay, so if I speak a few words in French, I'm not speaking French as a second language because French is not my second language. English is my second language. Okay. I speak French as, I'm not saying I can speak French. Okay. I'm just saying if I do, then I speak it as an additional language. Okay. Which implies as a foreign language. Okay. And English as an additional language is, is predominant in Asia. Okay. Because somehow English is more like a foreign language. So imagine in China, okay, in Japan, all right, okay, English is, English is likely to be a foreign language, okay, in those places. Okay, so basically, and then we then have, the oral part, the speaking part, English as a second language, same as the first, but this time it's just, the speaking part. So all of this are the same content, the same and all, but just choices. Okay. Now the last one is Cambridge O-level English. Now some schools take this, and when teachers move from these schools to another school, many of the employers are not aware that it's not the same variety. Okay, because for teachers that are experienced, yeah, in Cambridge, we know that we have Cambridge IGCSE and then we have Cambridge O level across subjects. Excuse me. Okay, so this is also English. I'm familiar with this. Excuse me, please. Thank you. I'm familiar with this, but so basically these are like the varieties of the IGCSE English examinations. Okay, so I needed to begin to think, what does my school take? Do we take the first language? If it's the first language, what's the subject code? It's very important so you know the syllabus to download. And then if it's second language, what's the subject code? If it's as an additional language, um, I really have not come across any school within Nigeria that takes English as an additional language. I've only seen them more in Asia and not in Africa. But in Africa, we see more first language and second language and O level. I know a few international schools that take English as that take Cambridge O level English. Okay, but all of this the same. I really do not believe that one is superior to the other. I think each of this each variety is king in its right. Okay, so let's move on. So the last part okay, like to comment on is variant. And you know, variant simply refers to the administrative zones. Okay. Cambridge has several administrative zones, and administrative zones vary by country, by continent, and also by country. So basically, it's a regional thing. Okay. And how do you identify your variant? Now, it's important for you as a teacher, okay, to know the variant your school takes. In Nigeria here, the variants are about three. So when you see the paper, you see a 0500, and then you see slash, you see 11, that's variant one. You see 12, that's variant two. You see 13, that's variant three. So just basically, it's the time zone. Even within Africa, okay, some African countries are 1 hour ahead. Okay, if some are 1 hour ahead, then definitely some would be behind. In Asia, that part of the world is oftentimes 5 hours ahead of Africa, of the African continent, and all of that. So basically, they have also found Cambridge has also found a way, okay, to pay attention to the difference in time zones. And so they built their administrative zones around the time zones to ensure that um, should some students have attempted a particular variant, okay, before other students in other parts of the world, these students don't have access to the questions. Okay, so that these students don't have an advantage over them. Okay, so that's why they came up with this. There might be some other reasons. of which I'm oblivious. Okay, but these are some of the reasonable, it's rational, okay, to come up with this. Okay, so you have a responsibility as a teacher to identify the variant that your school writes. And if you're within Nigeria, one of the easiest way to achieve that is, I want to believe that your school management should give you access to the question papers your students write after the exam, maybe a day or two after the exam. Once you get the booklet, check. So check the code, check where the course code is written, somewhere on the right hand side of the paper, of the cover page. Check, you'll see the course code, and you see something like the year. This is year 2020. So you see that 0500/23, that's like the year. But you would also see the variant. It could be May, June slash 11. That's May, June variant 1. Or, May, June slash 12. That's May, June variant 2. Or May, June slash 13. I'm talking about those within Nigeria. Okay, so you must know the variant. The variant helps you also to prepare your students. The variant also emphasizes focus. Now, that does not mean that there are specific focus for each variant. No, it's just simply something that came about, just to deal with the difference in time. Okay. However, if you've been teaching the IGCSE for quite some time, there are just certain unsaid, undocumented things that you haven't studied, the syllabus, question papers, and all that. You can predict sometimes. Now, I'm not saying that these things are obvious, okay, but if you've been at something for years, you could make possible predictions, and sometimes you're correct, at other times your predictions are incorrect. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of the session. I hope this overview, okay, this is an overview, I hope this session was of benefit to you. If you have questions, please feel free to type them in the comment section. If you also have any sort of query, please feel free. Criticism, please, you're welcome. And then if you think there's an aspect you probably might want me to maybe say a few things about, please feel free. Now, I'm not presenting myself, okay, as any sort of leader in this. I'm not. I have an employer. I've been teaching this for quite some time. So I'm just doing this out of just trying to share my experience with you. And the implication of this is that I'm also open to learning. Let me also make this clear that this is personally my decision to run this series. So I'm not speaking as anything, any Cambridge anything. No, I'm simply speaking as an English language educator, someone who's been teaching the first language English, IGCSE syllabus, for quite some time. I can equally teach, you know, quite a number of the list here because I've taken a few privately, and then in some of the workplaces I have where I've offered my um, services and all that. So please feel free if you have questions and all. Next week we'll be moving on to the next um, concept, and next week the focus will be on comprehension reading. I'll be emphasizing the structure, keywords, the importance of helping your students understand keywords, and I would equally talk about the marks. Okay, how can your student understand how to answer a question by simply paying attention to the marks allotted, and all that, and then how can your student ace, you know especially the comprehension reading section of the examination booklet. All right, if you have questions, please feel free. I'm glad that you could watch this video, and I hope that this wasn't a waste of time. Thank you. I'll see you next week. My name is Leko Andika. Bye.